You can see my PPT.
Yes, please, we can.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay. So this lecture is totally based on agricultural issues. And before going to agricultural issues or agrarian issues, we should know what is agrarian. It is use the word to describe something related to field, farming, or rural matter. It is also totally based on, you can say, agrarian is related to planting and harvesting. So we are going to these four, like agrarian movement, land reform, green revolution, agricultural extension, services. So agrarian structure or agrarian movement, but you should all know what is agrarian class. Agrarian class structure. So predominantly it is a agricultural based society and has distinctly organized agrarian class structure. Fundamentally speaking, human settlement can be classified as cities, town, and villages, and the agrarian class structure is characterized by village or rural city or society. So it is a classification based on based you can say it is a classification based on dominant economic activity of the people, agriculture, and this class structure is a result of economic social forces acting together. So the dynamic of agrarian class structure is in distinct classes. If we see the rural society, where have three main classes come to observe, like non-agriculturist. One sociologist, A.R. Desai, his book is Village Studies. He follows three things. Non-agriculturists are about 20%, landowners are 22%, tenants are about 27%, and agricultural laborers are approximately 31%. So in this agrarian class structure, about 60% of the cultivators are marginal cultivators who cultivate less than 2 hectare of the land. The small cultivator who work 2 to 5 hectare of land, and land who have 6% is a big cultivator. If we see in dynamics of class structure, so they are formed due to following causes. Number one, enforced by law. Number two, customary of traditionals. Number three, fluctuating in characters. One sociologist, famous sociologist, Daniel Thorner, did not agree with the thesis of three agricultural classes in the agrarian class structure. He believed that society, one man could sometime belong to three classes at once, and he could cultivate some land that he owned, rent some more land from bigger landowner, and in case of emergency, even act as an agricultural labor. So, in the field of other cultivator, Thorman come for the three term of analyze dynamic of agrarian class structure. So, if we see agrarian, it is use the word agrarian to describe something related to field, farming, rural matter, which I have already told. And system is a dynamic technological factor that affect agricultural practices, and it is premised on the idea that different systems have developed depending on the natural and social conditions scientific to particular region. So this agricultural system of land tenure means that is landowner and land organizations, and the technological and economic condition are not independent factor. They are concrete form of interlaced with natural and social condition found in each and every specific area. So natural condition the natural condition not only influence the products factor, generally like goods, poor soil, enough precipitation and temperature, favorable for growth and working, but also influence what type of ownership are found in an area, large farm or seldom found. For example, in a region where the soil condition are poor and topography is mountainous, so even more it is important, it is relation between agrarian structure and existing social condition in individual countries and region, even feudal, capitalist, socialist, social order result in very different condition. So if we go in agrarian class, class is defined by the kind of agricultural activities that form the occupation of the people of agrarian society. It means agrarian social class will include, like yesterday we have discussed, caste, class, land, ownership, jajmani. These things are included in agrarian class. So our next slide is the relation include attribute like crop shares, unpaid labor of the tenant agricultural labor, non-market wages, bondedness of labor, customary exactions, right over the women of inferior tenants, and laborer for sexual gratification of the landlord. Last one, very various expression of different use for the landlord, symbolizing subordinate and landowner caste class status of tenants. These are attributes. Next slide is what is agrarian class. We have three classes like feudalist agrarian system, which are families generally owning or controlling substantially large area of land, but they do not engage in cultivation directly. They lease out their to they lease out their land to tenant who cultivate. So the capitalistic agrarian system is farmer owning, controlling substantial land holding, who get their land cultivated with the help of wage labor under the own direction and delegated supervision, can be described as a capitalist farmer. So feudalist period began about 1000, and the agricultural population under feudalism in North Europe, it was typically organized into manors consisting of several hundred or more acre of land presided by land of the manor with the Roman Catholic church and priest. If we see, most of the people living on the manor were peasant farmers or serf who grew up crop for themselves and either labored for the lord and church or paid rent for their land. Two crops like barley and wheat were the most important crop in most European regions. Oats and rye were also grown, and also oxen and horses were used to draft animals. These are in feudalist agrarian system. If we see the capitalist agrarian system. It is one of the most well-established convention of Western culture. It is association of capitalism with cities, and capitalism is supposed to have been born and bred in the city. But more than more than the implication is that any city with its characteristic practice of the trade and commerce, and it is by its very nature potentially capitalist from the start, and only extraneous obstacle have stood in way of any urban civilization. So only the wrong religion, the wrong taste of a state of any kind, ideological, political, cultural, fetter trying the hand of urban classes, have prevented capitalism from spring up anywhere and everywhere since time immemorial. So what account for the development of capitalism in the West? According to this, it is the unique autonomy of city and their quintessential classes, the bourgeois class, or you can say in other word, capitalism emerged in the West class less because of the what was present than because of what was absent. So constraint on urban economy practices in those conditions, it took only more or less natural expansions of trade to trigger the development of capitalism. So there are many things to set against these consumptions, these assumptions. What the natural connection between city and capitalism? Among them, it is it is fact they tend to naturalize capitalism and to disguise its distinctiveness as a historically specific social form. So the tendency to identify capitalism with cities and urban commerce has been accompanied by. Please mute yourself. Perhaps the most salutary primitive. Please mute yourself.
Please, Ahmed, can you mute yourself?
Please mute yourself. I
Abdul
request to
Majid,
all
Abdul
viewers,
Majid,
please mute yourself.
please mute your speaker, please. Abdul Majid.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if we discuss about capitalistic agrarian system, which already I have discussed, and this is a one example you can go through by this journal, The Origin of Agrarian Capitalism in South Africa, by Tim Keegan, a journal of South African Studies. You can go through and have a very interesting examples about capitalism. So now we come to the movement. As a layman, I can say the acting of moving, change of palace or posture or transference by any means from one situation to another situation, or appropriate motion or progress movement. This is a layman kind of meaning, movement. Now, movement is, as a sociologist, as a social scientist, movement is attempt to bring about change, even in the sense of an entirely new social and economic order. It involves some goal-oriented, sustained mobilization of the collectivity in a relationship of conflict with some other group. We can say movement is a particularly the one which has far-reaching implication for change, must develop sooner or later comprehensive ideology And if we come in, what is social movement? So, social movement is a kind of demonstrate awareness of social movement on a state, national, and global level. And you can say it is a collective behavior, like differentiate between type and crowd. If we saw one book, that is social movement and social change, that it is a Egypt study. In January 2011, Egypt erupted in protest against the stifling rule of long time president Hosni Mubarak. The protests were sparked by the revolution in Tunisia, and in turn they inspired demonstration throughout the Middle East, in Libya, Syria, and beyond. This wave of protest movement traveled across the national border and spread like wildfire. There have been countless cause and factor in play in these protests and revolution, but many have noted to internet savvy youth of these countries. But some believe that the adoption of social technology, from Facebook pages to cell phone cameras, that help to organize and document the movement, contributed directly to the wave of protest called Arab Springs. The combination of deep unrest uh, and undisruptive technology means that the social movement were ready to rise up and seek change. What do Arab Springs? Occupy Wall Street, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, the anti-globalization movement, and the Tea Party have in common? Not so much you might think, but all they may be left wing or right wing, radical or conservative, highly organized or very diffuse. They are all example of our social movement. Means social movement are purposeful organized group striving to work toward a common goal. These groups might be attempting to create change, to resist change, or to provide a political voice to those otherwise disenfranchised. Social movement, it is create social change. So consider the effect of 2010 BP oil spill in Gulf of Mexico. This disaster exemplify how a change in environment, and coupled with use of technology to fix that change, combined with anti-oil sentiment in movement and social institution, led to change in offshore oil drilling policy, and subsequently in the effort to support to Gulf Coast rebuilding. Four changes occurred. So this is a social movement, and I can give you one example about South African countries. I have read one article. The South African War occurred at the time when many black communities suffered under great hardship during, I think, that time was 1890s. Drought and cattle diseases impoverished and pastoralist, while competition increased for black land and labor during the war. Black South African identify with the British cause because imperial politicians assured them the equal law, equal liberty for all races would prevail after the Boer defeat. And however, the Treaty of Vereeniging withdrew such promises, and sense of betrayal stimulated political protest, especially among mission educated blacks. Various organizations arose to counter the impending union of white ruled provinces of ethically and regionally uniting blacks, and in response to constitutional convention, black held their own in Bloemfontein. This provided an important step toward the formation of permanent national black political organization, such as organization was finally founded on around January 8, 1912, and when the South African Native National Congress from 1923, the African National Congress came into existence, and not black protest occurred. Through the new middle organization, however, some black farmer from Natal refused to pay poll tax in 1906, and their resistance developed into an armed rising led by Bambatha, a Zulu chief, and at the end of reluctant rebellion, between 3,000 and 4,000 blacks had been killed and many thousand imprisoned. So parallel development took place among politically conscious colored and Indians. Their first nationally based organization was African organization that is founded in Cape Town in 1902 under the presidency of Abdullah Abdul Rahman, and this body lobbied for colored right and had link at the time. These are the some examples which you can go through. Now, one sociologist defined change. This is another topic. Sociologists define social change as a changes in human interaction and relationship that transform culture and social institution, and these changes occur time often have profound uh, long-term consequences for the society. It means you can say collective behavior and social movement are just two forces driving social change, and which is change in society. It is created through social movement as well as external factors. External factor means environmental shift or technological innovation. Any disruptive shift in the status quo, be it intentional or random, human caused or natural, it can lead to social change. Below are some of likely causes. So, what causes of social changes? Changes to technology, changes to social institution, changes to population, and the environmental alone, or in some combination, create change. Now, we will focus on four agents of change recognized by social scientists: technology, social institution, population, and environment. What is technology? I would like to discuss. Some would say that improving technology has made our life easier. Imagine what your day would be like without the internet, the automobile, or the electricity. In the word is flat, one sociologist, Thomas Friedman, 2005, argued technology is driving force behind the globalization, and while the other forces of social change, like social institution, population, and in environment, it is play a comparatively minor role. And Friedman suggests we can view globalization as occurring three distinct periods. First period is globalization was driven by military expansion powered by horsepower and wind power. And the countries best able to take advantage of these power sources expended the most, exerting control over the politics of the globe from the late 15th century around the year 1800. But that technology can create in the other three forces social scientists linked to social change. Advances in medical technology allow otherwise infertile women to bear children, indirectly leading to increase in population. Advances in agricultural technology have all allowed us to genetically alter and patent food products, changing our environment in innumerable way. Of course, some drawbacks are the increasing gap between the technology have and have nots, sometime called digital divide, occur both locally and globally. Further, these are added security risk, the loss of privacy, the risk of total system failure, panic and the added vulnerability created by technological dependence. Now, we come to the social institution. It is also part of change and development or change and movement. Each change in a single social institution lead to change in all social institutions. For example, the industrialization of society means that there was no longer a need for large family lies to produce enough manual labor to run a farm. Further, new job opportunities were in close proximity to urban centers where living space was at premium. The result is the average family size shrunk significantly. And this same shift towards industrial corporate entities also changed the view. We view the government involvement in the private sector created the global economy, provided new political platform, and even spurred new religion and new form of religious worship like Scientology. It has also in the form of also in the form of what we educate our children. Originally, school were set up to accommodate on agricultural calendar, so children could be home to work the field in the summer. Even today, teaching model are largely based on preparing a student for industrial job. So these are the changes coming. Now, next slide, which I've already told, movement and change. And this is analysis of movement and changes slide. These are the institutional and non-institutionalized means pertain to a system defined by established power governing that system. If it declare a given means adopted by movement as illegal and subject to severe penal action, and it has to consider a non-institutional. There are three aspects like violence, social legitimacy, and institutionalized or non-institutionalized. It means employed by the state for overall social control and also by a movement emerging out of contradiction within the societal system. So, but one thing I would like to highlight, the identical mask protest may be accepted as a part of political culture and structure of India or USA, but not so in China and South Africa. Some examples you can go through by this book, Social Movement and the Struggle for Shelter, case study of E. Thickwini, Dynamically, very good book, and have some article I have read. It is very good. And the second one is a social movement in transitional society. This is also a case study of Congress of South African Trade Union. This is also a good book. Now I discuss the Quasi movement. Quasi movement is a volitional movement which are minimized by the subject to such an extent that finally they became undetectable by the objective measure. Means executive movement are the only known to natural by which individuals are able to communicate with the environment, and also this include a broad repertoire of motor activities such as skilled limb and finger movement, locomotion, eye movement, vocalization, it's so and so. We define movement performance as a sequence of neuronal activation. It is related to carrying out a motor intention, and which is uh, which culminates in the contradiction of muscles. The latter is also referred to a movement, execution or motor response. And some sociologists like Dekety 1996, Genard 2001, and one thinker is Maclon Vettel, and also Jack 2006. He said if we provide evidence for the novel type of motor cognitive activity which is neither movement, execution, nor imaginary. So we refer to this phenomena as a quasi movement and define like combine of electroencephalographic psychological testing in order to, these are the nature of quasi movement. Now we come to the next slide. Movement arising out feudalistic contradiction, in Gramdan. This is after 1950. Gramdan is coming of independence and after the death of Mahatma Gandhi ji on the anvil of Tebhaga and Telanga movement, and it is emerged the Bhudan and after that Gramdan movement, and as alternative to Tebhaga and Telangana movement. So Gramdan and Bhudan were extension of the Gandhi's concept for the replacement of private ownership of property by trusteeship, particularly in the case of land. Trusteeship implied that owners of the means of production like land and machineries, and it should be become trustees of their wealth and enterprises. That is also land and machineries, and which should belong to community which is labor on it. And Vinoba Bhave's Bhudan movement began in Nalanda. We are going to discuss some movements. Bhudan movement began in Nalanda and hotbed of the Telanga movement. Once Vinoba Bhave asked the landed families to consider the landless as their own additional unborn children and to give their share to them. In the next stage, landowner in village are requested to give their share on them. In this next stage, the landowner in village are requested to shift their entire land in the village. The land would then belong to village and not to individual. This is the Vinoba Bhave movement, and the other movement is Sarvodaya Sahayog Samiti. It is a cooperative kind of society. And Gram Sabha means it is a village assembly, and decision involve collective farming on 18 acre of Gramdan land. Sharing cropping contract with landowner had to be routed through the cooperative society, and community center, cattle shed, community garden were established through this Shramdan. Shramdan means voluntary gift of honor. The village children slept at the same place in the community center complex irrespective of caste difference, and a package of village industries was started: the oil press, beekeeping, production of toddy molasses, and of course the charkha is a spinning wheel for spinning, and the kargha is a loom for weaving. An egalitarian system evolved very rapidly. This is I have told about Gramdan, Bhudan. Now the Naxalwari and Naxalite movement, 1967 onward, Green Revolution. Naxalwari movement in a Siliguri subdivision of Darjeeling district, which is matured in 1967, and it is derived name from the Naxalwari village in North Bengal. And it is a very prolonged struggle by the Peasant Association against feudal exploitation and subversion of land. And one committee, that is Peasant Committee of the Communist Party, engaged in relentless struggle against the landlord. In this movement in 1967, and two back-to-back incident ignited the Naxalwari movement, which would have a far-reaching impact on India, politics, society, and culture, and shimmering discontent among peasants was palpable in North in North rural Bengal. So, under the leadership of Charu Majumdar, Kanu Sanyal, Mujibur Rahman, these are the leaders, were organizing themselves to forcibly seize land from landowners. And on May 24th, during operation to take over land, the police arrived to disperse a gathering of 1,000 protesting peasants in Naxalbari. And during the confrontation, Inspector Sonam Wangel is a famous police officer that time in Naxalbari movement, was struck by 3 arrows and was killed. And some writer, I think Ivan Indrajit, said on May 25th at Bengal Jat village near Naxalbari, the police opened fire. This is a study on a crowd of mainly women protesters and killed 8 women who were 2 children and 1 young man. From point a new chapter began in a post-independence history written in fire and blood. And June 28, 1967, Radio Peking joyfully announced a peal of spring thunder was crashed over the land of India. Revolutionary peasants in Darjeeling area have been risen in rebellion. Now come to the Operation Varga. Operation Varga was a land reform movement throughout the rural West Bengal for recording the names of sharecroppers while avoiding the time-consuming method of recording through the settlement machineries, and in bestowed on the Bargadars. Bargadar means sharecroppers. The legal protection against eviction by the landlords and entitle them to due to share of produce. And this operation Barga was launched in 1978 and concluded by the mid, I think, 1980s, and introduced in 1978, given legal backing in 1979 and 1980. Operation Barga that time became a very popular but controversial measure for land reform. And the ultimate aim of this land reform was facilitate the conversion of the state Bargadar sharecropper into landowner. So, in line with the directive principle of the state of policy of the Indian Constitution, today Barga has recorded name of approximately 1.5 million sharecropper, and it has been marked as one of the most or more successful land reform program in India. This is a Varga operation. Now we come to the land reform. And in land reform, I would like to highlight objective meaning, historical perspective, evolution of intermediary tenancy reform, ceiling on land holding, new development, and land reform assessment. So land reform is a purpose. What is land reform? I'm going to tell. This is a purposive change in the way in which agricultural land is held or owned. The method of cultivation that are employed, or the relation of agricultural to rest of economy, means reforms such as may be proclaimed by the government, by the interested groups, or by the revolution. The concept of land reform has varied over time according to range of function which land itself has performed as a factor of production, a store of value and wealth, a status symbol, or source of social and political influence. So land value reflect its relative scarcity, which in a market economy, it is usually depends on ratio between the area of usable land and size of area population. If we observe, as per capita land are declined and the relative value of land rises, and land become increasingly a source of conflict among economic and social group within the community. If we think, the pattern of wealth and the income distribution and of social and political influence are partly determined by law governing land tenure, and these laws specify acceptable forms of tenure and the privileges and the responsibilities that go with them, and also they define the land title and the extent to which the owner can freely dispose and it and to of the income accruing from its use. So in this term or in this sense, the form of tenure determine the wealth and the income distribution based on the land. So historically, land reform meant reform of the tenure system or redistribution of land ownership right. And in recent decade, the concept has been broadened in the recognition of strategic role of land and agriculture in development. Land reform has therefore become a synonymous with agrarian reform or rapid improvement of agrarian structure, and which comprise the land tenure system. So now come to the objectives. Reform is usually introduced by government initiative or in response to internal and external pressure to resolve or to prevent an economic, social, and political crisis. Thus, reform may be considered a problem solving mechanism. The true motive of reform is it may well differ from the announced by the reformer. So, objective may be especially significant if the proclaimed objective have been forced upon reformer who do not support those objectives. So we can take political and social objective of land reform. The most common proclaimed objective of land reform is abolished feudalism, which is usually means overthrowing the landlord classes and transferring it power to reforming elite or its surrogate. If another objective also I can discuss to free the peasant from subjugation to and dependence on the exploiter and make them active citizen by restoring what assertively had been taken away from them. The third objective to create democracy. It is a stated purpose of both capitalist and in the 20th century communist reformers. And most capitalist reforms are based on premise that individual private ownership in the form of independent family form will promote and sustain democratic institution. And communist reformer, in contrast, usually aimed at the overthrowing both feudalism and capitalism on the premise and means of production. Private ownership of land inherently breeds exploitation. The finally reform may be introduced as the most expedient way to resolve a crisis, avoid revolution. The next slide, it is objective. Already I have told you. Now come to the green revolution. Green revolution is began in mid 1960 and name given to the first systematic attempt to increase agricultural production, particularly that of food grains in India and some other developing countries by applying new technology of cultivation, and it is based on biochemical innovations that include high yielding varieties, and three main components which I have shown in slide. So aspect of green revolution means high yielding variety, that is HYV, mechanism of agriculture, use of chemical fertilizer and pesticides. The green revolution is referred as a process of increasing agricultural production by incorporating modern tools and technique, and also it is associated with agriculture production. It is a period when agriculture of country was converted into industrial system due to adoption of modern method and techniques like the use of high yielding variety, seeds, tractors, irrigations, pesticides and fertilization. This is also, you can see, an impact of green revolution: yield, income and employment. This is three characteristic. Number one, pattern of output, growth and instability. Second is output prices, marketed surplus and food grain consumptions. Third one is income distribution, mechanization and employment. And some schemes are also, you should know about 11 schemes are part of the umbrella scheme under the green revolution. One is MIDH, that is Mission for Integrated Development of Horticulture. It aimed to promote comprehensive growth of horticulture sector and enhance the production of the sector. Second one is NFSM, this is National Food Security Mission. It also include natural mission in oil seed and oil palm. And this scheme aimed to increase the production of wheat, pulses, rice, oats, cereal, commercial crops, etc. And third one is National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture. It aimed to promote sustainable agriculture practices that are best suitable for the specific agroecology, focusing on integrated farming. Fourth one is Submission on Agricultural Extension, that is SEMI. This aim to increase the production of seeds, high quality of seeds, the great quality of farm same seed, increase and strengthen the seed multiplication. Sixth one is submission on agriculture mechanism. It also increased the reach of farm mechanization to small and marginal farmers. And seventh one is submission on plant protection and plant quantitative. This also aim to minimize loss to quality and yield of agriculture crop from insect, pest, weed, etc. So many schemes under the umbrella of this green revolution. And now come to the next slide. Some problems area. This is uneven spread, soil nutrients depletion and imbalances, decline total factor productivity, water management and pest problem is also. And what agricultural extension services. But before going to this slide, I want to discuss HYVP. It was restricted only 5 crop, that is wheat, rice, jowar, bajra and maize. Now I'll take 5-minute break and come after 5 minutes. I'll take 5-minute breaks and we'll join after 5 minutes.
All right, madam.